Hello again, everybody. And, yeah, Season 5 has started. Season 5 started 2 days ago. Not done with my previous reviews yet, but I'm still trying to get them all out there. And I will be trying to review Season 5 too, but I'm going to have to find a different way to do the screen caps, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Anyway, so, for those of you that may be new to my videos, my reviews, I don't consider myself a book person, per se, because I did watch the first 4 years of the show before I finished reading the books, and I have read all the books, but from everything they've been telling us, we're going to get to the end of all the currently published books by the end of the current season of the show, so it won't really be much of a worry after this season, because nobody will know what's happening after this season, apparently. But anyway, so I consider myself a show watcher who has since read the books because of the show. So, I do sometimes mention if things are different in the book, but I don't sit there and hate on the show for changing things most of the time. Now, there's a couple little things in this particular episode that I think were done a little better in the book, but like I said, I don't sit there and hate on the show like so many book people out there do. But we shall see how it goes, and I don't know if I have any more to say in this episode than I normally have about the regular episodes, but I do have more screen caps, so it might end up being a little bit of a longer video, but we shall see, we shall see. Anyway, this is the season finale of the second season, so it's episode 210, 10th episode, second season. It's called Valar Morghulis. A lot of people seem to have trouble pronouncing that, even though they say it 8 million times or so throughout the show, but it's Valar Morghulis, which is Valerian for all men must die. But anyway, this one begins right after the last episode of the Battle of Blackwater, and this is Tyrion waking up in his new quarters. They play some battle sounds as he's coming to, and you've seen the reflection of the battle, and it changes the reflection of what's really going on, which is him in his new quarters with Pycelle ominously leaning over him. And you know him and Pycelle are such good pals after he locked Pycelle up and threw him in the dungeons or the black cells, whatever. And so Tyrion's a little put off by the fact that somebody who hates him is looming over him as he's unconscious. And he immediately starts yelling for Pod, his squire. Podrick, sword actually is more adequate of a term. Sword, squire, they're similar. But anyway, and he tells Pod to come in and to go get Bronn or Varys and tell them that he is very much alive, just in case Pycelle has something nasty in store for him, because he doesn't trust Pycelle at all, and he actually thinks that Pycelle might have something to do with Jon Arryn's death, or at least to the point of letting Jon Arryn die. Anyway, so he tells Pod to go get Bronn or Varys, and he asks Pycelle where he is, and Pycelle says it's his new quarters, and they're a little cramped, but he doesn't need much room, ha ha. And he also informs Tyrion that he's no longer the hand of the king. So, not only has he been injured and left unconscious at the care of Pycelle, and put in new quarters that are much smaller and less extravagant than his previous quarters, he is now being told that he no longer has his old job either. So he's no longer hand of the king either. So he's gone from being the hero of the battle to basically looks like pretty much nothing at this point. He's pretty much lost all of his power and position. Even though he did all the things he did for the battle. And again, I have to apologize. My throat is killing me. My throat is always killing me, and it just gets so much worse when I talk. But anyway, that's the gist of that scene for now. And then we get to Tywin riding into the throne room, his horse taking a dump on the throne room floor, because he's just Tywin. He can get away with stuff like that. Nobody will say a word to him. But he comes in, and Joffrey is proclaiming Tywin to be the savior of the city and naming him as the new hand of the king and all that fun stuff. So basically, Tyrion did everything. Tywin came in at the last minute, and Tyrion is just being left to rot in some tiny little room, and Tywin is being given all the glory and all the credit for everything. Seems logical. Then again, look who's in charge. But anyway, so he is, as I said, he's now been named Hand of the King. This is him getting his little pin, the little hand pin that Ned used to wear, the one that he threw on the table when Albert wanted to kill Daenerys, that pin. Alright, and then all the other people are getting their credit for their part in this so-called battle. And the first one we see is Peter Baelish, Littlefinger. And he, after Tywin rides back out of the throne room, Peter comes up and kneels, and then he gets credit for helping unite the Tyrells and the Lannisters, and Joffrey tells Peter that he can have Harrenhal. I hate my throat, I really do. So he tells Peter that he can get Harrenhal for helping unite the Lannisters and the Tyrells, and the whole time Varys is watching and looking none too impressed. But as you can see, we also get another new character. Now, we've met Loras before, but Loras brings in his lovely, supposedly younger sister, Marjorie. This is the first time we meet Marjorie. She's one in the blue dress that's completely falling out of the dress, which would be completely against all the dress codes of this era and nobility, but whatever. Anyway, anyway. Oh yeah, we have met Marjorie before. She was the one that was married to Renly, who, see, I just rewatched the whole entire season before the new season started, so still trying to get straight what we're past in the reviews. But yeah, we've met Marjorie before. She was married to Renly and, you know, telling him that he could bring his brother in and whatever else. But anyway, this is where, Loras introduces Joffrey to Renly. So this is when not Renly, Marjorie. I swear. Okay. This is when Loras introduced Joffrey to Marjorie. And if you recall, this goes back to that little conversation that Baelish had with Marjorie about, do you want to be a queen? No, I want to be the queen. Yeah. I know, everybody loves Natalie Dormer. I don't get it. I don't know why. It's like, when I see Natalie Dormer, I can't stop thinking about her playing Anne Boleyn in The Tudors, and I couldn't stand her in that, so yeah. Anyway, but yeah, everybody thinks she's really pretty, and I never thought she was remotely attractive, but whatever. Anyway, I know, bring on the hate, everybody loves Natalie. But anyway, so Loras has given Joffrey some crap about how Marjorie's still a virgin, and yes, believe me, it's crap. That becomes pretty clear as the show goes on. Marjorie ain't no virgin. Alright, but anyway, as if we couldn't tell, she's offering to have a threesome with her husband and her brother when we first met her. Not first met her, but second met her. But anyway, and then Loras basically says that what he wants from Joffrey, because Joffrey says, oh, ask for anything and I'll give it to you because you helped, whatever. And Loras says he wants Joffrey to marry his sister who's still a virgin because Renly died before they could sleep together or whatever. And they do this fakey flirting crap. It's definitely fakey on Marjorie's part. Everything Marjorie does is fakey. She's just so two-faced. But anyway, and she says, oh, I've heard about how wonderful you are, and I've come to love you from afar, and all this BS. And you know it's complete BS, because nobody has ever said anything about Joffrey being lovely and wonderful. So obviously it's piles and piles of BS. And of course, Joffrey, being the idiot he is falling for it, and he's flirting back, and he says, oh, I'd love to, you know, marry you and follow my heart, and because I've heard about how beautiful you are, and she's not beautiful. Okay, but anyway, and he says, but no, I'm promised to another, and I can't possibly break my promise to Sansa Stark, because, you know, we're so in love and all that crap, which, you know, is complete BS on his part too. So I guess maybe him and Marjorie are perfect for each other. Everything they say is a complete lie. But anyway, and then Cersei and Pycelle tell him that since Ned Stark was a traitor and Robb Stark is in open rebellion, that his betrothal to Sansa no longer counts, and that they couldn't possibly marry him to Sansa now that they know what her family's like and all this other stuff, and they basically let him out of his betrothal to Sansa. and say that yes, he can marry Marjorie. Because, well, Cersei's not really thrilled with the Tyrells, but she really doesn't like the Starks. So it's like the lesser of two evils, I guess, is what she's seeing here. Although I don't know. As you get to know more about the Tyrells, you really wonder what exactly do they have in mind in the long run. What's their end game? I mean, we have a pretty good idea. Their end game is the same thing as Baelish's end game. They're just going about it in two different ways. But anyway, so the moral of this scene is that Joffrey gets let out of his betrothal to Sansa and ends up now being engaged to Marjorie Tyrell, who's supposed to be 16 and she's like 30 something in real life, so really bad casting if you ask me. But anyway, so, I mean, they don't say how old she is in the show. They kind of insinuate that she's like somewhere between 17 and 20, but she's way older than that. Anyway, so Sansa gets set aside, so to speak, and she's trying to look like she's upset. But as you can see by the end of this scene, when they're Joffrey and Marjorie are officially betrothed by the end of the scene, and Sansa's trying to play like she's all upset, and then when she turns around, she starts smiling and almost laughing. She's like actually thrilled that she no longer has to marry Joffrey. So it goes to show that, you know, she has been putting on an act all this time about how much she loves Joffrey. It's just, she's just, I can't help it. Sansa just annoys me to no end, even though everybody says, oh, what else could she have done? I don't know, I don't care, she annoys me to no end. But anyway, so Sansa is all happy and she's walking away, and then of course, creepo, pedophile, pervert, Baelish man, he's always creeping on her. He sneaks up behind her, and he's like, and she, of course, immediately stops smiling, like, oh, I'm sad, yeah, I'm sad, And he tells her that he could take her home, or get her home, or whatever, although at this point in time, Winterfell's not exactly looking good either, because Theon's taken over there. But she says that, you know, she assumes that she's going to no longer have to marry Joffrey and can just leave. And he says, oh no, Joffrey is going to still torture you because he's Joffrey, basically. He gives her a big old heaping of reality here. And starts with this, oh, you've a gentle heart, and your mother was like a sister to me, so apparently he's got more in common with Jaime than we thought. I don't know. He's got the hots for Catelyn and saying she was like a sister. Not quite. But, and then she's like, oh, well, King's Landing is my home, and this is where he offers to take her home, because he says, basically, she's still going to be tortured by Joffrey. And he says, and when she says that King's Landing is her home, he's like, you know, we're all liars here, and we're all better liars than you. So he's basically saying that her life isn't going to get any better. It's actually probably going to get even worse now, because now Joffrey doesn't even have to pretend to respect her anymore, since she's no longer his fiancée. And then we go to, see, I have so many screen caps, I thought for sure that I would be like, not having as much to say as I would need to say to get through the screen caps, but we'll see. So we go to Roz, and she's covering up the dark circles under her eyes, and Varys comes in, and she thinks he's a customer, and then realizes that he's not there for that. She quickly discovers that he is Varys, the spy master, the master of whispers, the spider. And, of course, her demeanor immediately changes, because, you know, Varys has got that reputation that he's so untrustworthy. When I've always said I've always liked Varys way better than Baelish. But anyway, so the whole gist of this scene is that Varys has noticed that Baelish is getting a lot more power, and he didn't look very impressed with that idea, because he does not like the idea of Baelish being in power. And it's not just a personal rivalry between them. He knows Baelish better than most people, even though Baelish hides most of his motives. Varys is just as sneaky, and he knows a lot more about Baelish than most people do. And he is telling Roz that he knows about when her and Daisy had to beat each other up for Joffrey's name day, and we still don't know if Daisy's alive or dead, but we haven't seen her, so I'm guessing she's dead. And he's saying that she isn't going to ever be anything more than a whore to abuse if she's working for Baelish, but he wants to offer her a different position because he thinks that she's more intelligent and that he can use her, since she's already in there with Baelish, he can use her to help take down Baelish, so to speak. And he wants her to come work for him, basically. And he says that unlike Baelish, he's not going to, give her a way to be abused, and he just wants her to be more of a partner than property. And I mean, we still don't know how much of this is sincere, but it seems like he'd be a little more trustworthy than Baelish, considering what Baelish has done, and he's threatened her and said, "No, if you don't pretend to be happy, you're going to get killed." Remember that lovely scene. So that's just Varys offering Roz a position as a little bit more than a prostitute, and actually a position as one of his spies, his little birds. And then we go back to the Jaime and Brienne road trip, and Jaime virgin shaming Brienne some more and picking on her, and the usual repertoire they have, repartee. And of course they get interrupted when they come upon these 3 prostitutes who have been hung, and they have a sign that says they lay with lions or something along those lines. So basically these 3 prostitutes are in the north still, apparently, or close to the north. I guess they're probably in the Riverlands, yeah, because that's where the Stark forces were. But yeah, they're still in the Riverlands, I think. And they come across these dead hookers who have been hung because they serviced the Lannister men, and Jaime assumes that it was the Stark men that did it, because, Starks and Lannisters, they hate each other. And he tells Brienne, "Oh, you must be proud to serve the Starks." He's trying to ask, the Lannisters are so much more high and mighty than the Starks. Yeah, they're no good guys. But anyway, and she says, "I don't serve the Starks, I serve Cat." Lady Catelyn, she says, of course, but still. And he says, "Oh, tell yourself that when you see them and you're swinging your dreams tonight." And then she's going to take them down and bury them. And then these 3 Stark men are coming down the road, and she said, and they say, "Well, what are you doing?" And she said that she's traveling a prisoner, and of course they're laughing because she's a woman, and that doesn't seem like something a woman would be doing. And eventually what happens here is that one of them recognizes Jaime, and they try to put it off "Oh, he's not Jaime." And Brienne tries to change subject and says, "Oh, well, I hope you gave them quick deaths." And the one guy says, "Oh, 2 of them did." And basically it comes down to a confrontation, because the one guy starts to recognize Jaime and finally says, "Oh, wait, you're the Kingslayer, aren't you?" And Brienne's like, "Oh, if he was the Kingslayer, he wouldn't be with me, and you're mistaken." And they end up fighting because they don't want to drop it, and the one guy's convinced that it's Jaime Lannister, even though they make up some story about him stealing a pig or something to feed his starving family or something. And basically they don't buy it, and it comes down to a fight, and Brienne kills 2 of them real quick, and even says to the 3rd one, "There you go, 2 quick deaths," just because he said that he gave 2 of the prostitutes quick deaths. And then she really slowly slices up the 3rd guy, and then proceeds to pull the women down to bury them, which was her original plan. But it didn't stop her from fighting with the Stark men who recognized Jaime, because even though Brienne is all she's one of the ones that fall closer into the category of good guys, she's still honor bound to keep this oath to Catelyn to get Jaime back to King's Landing, so that she can get Sansa and Arya back, because everybody still thinks Arya's in King's Landing. And So even though she is one of the more honorable people, because of that, she's still willing to kill. Because she knows that if these guys recognize Jaime, she's not going to be able to get Jaime back to King's Landing, and it's going to cause problems. So she ends up killing them to hide the fact that she and Jaime are on this mission, so to speak. And she doesn't want anything to stop that mission because she made an oath to Catelyn to help her children. She'll do anything she can to make sure that she can keep that oath to Catelyn. And also, during this whole fight scene that happens here, yeah, there's a few more caps here, so I don't know. Like I said, I've got more caps in this one, so we'll see. But yeah, during this little fight here, Brienne takes out these guys really quick, and she's really brutal with the third guy too. And you can just see the look on Jaime's face, like, okay. Because before, if you remember the last time we saw them, he was doubting her abilities because she was a female. And then he sees her in action for the first time here. And you can see the look on his face like, okay, so I guess she is a pretty good fighter. So Jaime gets a little bit of a dose of reality there as well, because, you know, he was automatically underestimating Brienne just because Brienne was a female. And this is the first time that he sees what Brienne can actually do when she decides to be violent, when she is pushed to be violent. And it's an interesting little, you know, a revelation for Jaime, because all this time he was being all, you know, smug, like he was so much better than her, and he figured that, you know, the first second he could easily get away from her because she's just a woman, right? So, as you can see, he was really, really underestimating her. And this is the first time he realizes, oh, maybe she's a little more formidable than I thought, and a little more deadly than I thought. So that's a nice little scene there. And Nikolai, Jaime, his reactions are really good, because you just see the look on his face like, okay, maybe she actually could put up a bit of a fight if I tried to get away. So that's kind of, I guess that's the whole point of that scene, so that Jaime can see that Brienne is a little bit more of a challenge than he thought she would be, because he's, you know, been looking down on her, and, oh, she's just a woman, and I can outsmart her, and I'm a better fighter. Well, now he knows what kind of fighter she is. And then, remember, I said I don't usually complain. But you know, if you've watched my earlier reviews, this Talisa BS just annoys me to no end, the Talisa and Robb thing. It's just, yeah. And this is basically just a scene where Robb tells Catelyn that even though he's promised to marry Walder Frey's daughter, he's now planning on marrying Talisa instead because he's in love with her. In love. So he's going to basically throw away the entire war and break this oath because he's in love. In love. Okay, they're calling him a king. How many kings in this time period, in this era, marry for love? I'm guessing the number is somewhere between 0 and 0. And anytime they have some kind of fascination with some pretty little girl, they just keep her as a mistress. And, you know, I'm not advocating cheating, but that's the way it was. If the king had a thing for some girl that wasn't his wife, he just kept her as a mistress and nobody cared. But no, he's gonna marry Talisa, even though they're basically gonna screw themselves by this, and Catelyn's, you know, warning him that Walder Frey shouldn't be crossed, and that a marriage would be stronger if it was built on something a little more meaningful than a fleeting feeling, which you never know how long it's going to last. But anyway, we'll get more of Robb later. Not much more, but a little more. But anyway. And then we get to Stannis pouting because he's lost the Battle of Blackwater. He's taking it out on Melisandre. He's finally doubting all of her little prophecies and visions and promises. And, you know, he's finally, you know, saying, hey, maybe I am an idiot for listening to this girl. So, you know, same thing most of us have been saying this whole time. And Melisandre tries to claim that they only lost at Blackwater because she wasn't there. I would like to know what exactly she had planned for if she had been there. That's what I want to know, because she's trying to claim that, they wouldn't have lost if she was there. But he's annoyed with her, and saying that listening to her and her fire god is basically the same thing as being a savage, and he's all ticked off because he thinks that she's, made it all up and he fell for it. And that's why he's ticked. So he attacks her. And, because he says that he is fighting, he got into this war, and it's all lost because she lied and he believed her, and she says that she's been fighting a war longer than him, and he says, show me how you fight, and then he starts to strangle her. And basically, he's like, well, where's your God now? Can he save you now? If your God's so real, can he save you now? Because I'm going to kill you. And she doesn't even fight him back. And he's like, where's your God? Where's your God? And she says, inside you. Whatever. If you've seen my prophecy video, Melisandre's got visions, and she sees things that do come true, but she screws them up and doesn't always get them right. And it hurts my brain how she ever came to the conclusion that Stannis meant anything to anyone, anywhere, ever. But anyway, so yeah, her thinking that Stannis is remotely useful is yeah. Anyway, so basically, she tells him that she still sees his victory, and she gives him all these other prophecies, which, also this is the scene where he finally, for the first time ever, voices some kind of regret about kinslaying. Remember, they did kill his own brother. It's the first time he's actually even acknowledged that he killed his own brother. But anyway, and she gives him all these prophecies, which weren't in the book. They cut out all the prophecies that were in the book, but then put in these ones that weren't. So, I don't know, that's a little strange. Yeah, my big issue with the show is the prophecies and how they've dealt with them. But anyway, she tells him all this stuff, like, the war is going to last for years, and it'll cost thousands of lives, and he'll betray the men serving him and his family, and he'll betray everything he once held dear, but it'll all be worth it, because he's the son of fire and the warrior of light, and he'll sweep aside pretenders, and he will be king. And she tells him to look into the fire and see what she sees. And this all sounds like complete and total BS to me, like all this stuff she's saying to him, but I can't help thinking that if she was saying this to another character, I think then it would make a lot more sense. And that's all I'm going to say. I mean, they haven't revealed for sure that whether or not Stannis is the savior, but if you watch my prophecy video, there's a lot of people that don't think it's Stannis and think it might be somebody else. And I'm just imagining if she did say this is somebody else, if it would make a lot more sense, and I think it would. But anyway, and of course this all turns out that he claims that he does see something in the fire, but of course they don't explain what it is that he's seeing, and we don't actually see what it is that he's seeing. So that's how that ends. And then we get back to Winterfell, Theon, Kraken. So they're surrounded by 500 Northerners, and Theon's inside with Lewin, and he's going nuts because of the guy that keeps blowing the horn outside, and he's losing it, basically, and he knows he's surrounded, and he's lost, and he's going to fail, and if he even tries to fight, he's going to die because they're way outnumbered. His sister didn't bring help. His father isn't answering any of his messages. He wants Lewin to send more messages, but Lewin says, nope, you killed all the ravens, remember? Duh. And, yeah, Theon is just snapping because he knows he's lost at this point, and he knows that he's pretty much doomed himself. And Lewin says, okay, listen, maesters are bound to a home, not a person. So whoever's running the home is whoever I am loyal to, so that means I am now serving you. And he tries to explain to Theon that he could sneak out and go to the wall. And that would be his only hope here. Is if he snuck out and went to the wall, then everything that he did before would be forgiven, and he could still have some semblance of a life. So he's basically, just telling him there is one way you could get out of this. There is one way you can save yourself, and that is by sneaking out and heading to the wall and taking the black and joining the Night's Watch. And that's the only option you have, and it's your best option. So he's telling him just to get out while he still can. And you can see that Theon's guilty conscience is really starting to get to him now. And we get a lot more of that in the book because he's having all these nightmares and stuff ever since he took over Winterfell about the Starks getting vengeance in gruesome ways against him for what he's done. So he knows he screwed up. Yeah, he knows. And basically Luwin says, listen, Theon, I've known you since you were a kid. I know you're not the person you're pretending to be. This, warrior and conqueror who took Winterfell. I know that that's all an act. And then Theon says, yeah, that may be true, but now I've gone too far to pretend to be anything else. So this is Theon realizing, and making it obvious to us that he realizes that, yeah, this isn't really him. He just did this to try to impress his father and try to get back into his original family, and it all blew up in his face, and now he's pretty much screwed himself beyond repair, and he knows that he's done this, and he's just admitting to Luwin and himself that he has failed, and he has screwed things up irreparably, and he knows it, and he doesn't think that he's going to have any choice here, even though Luwin's telling him, to run away. And Theon doesn't even think that he could manage to do that. And also, there's the fact that Jon's at the wall. So he knows that even if he did manage to sneak out and make it to the wall, he'd still have to answer for everything he's done because Jon's at the wall. So he really doesn't have any option. He knows that it just nothing he can do is going to save himself at this point, because either the Northmen outside are going to kill him or Jon's going to kill him because of everything he's done. So yeah, that's the Theon is really, really screwed speech. Scene, whatever. So anyway, he just admits that he's got no other options here. He's just going to go out and he's going to die fighting because that's all he can do. So then he goes outside and makes his speech to his 20 men that are holding Winterfell with him. And he gives this big rah rah, let's go kill them. There's 500 of them and 20 of us, but even though we're all gonna die, everybody will remember us. All this BS, trying to appeal to the Ironborn's bloodlust, saying, yeah, we're gonna die, but everybody will remember us. Yeah, they're gonna remember you, but probably not in a very good way. But anyway, so he makes this big long speech about how everybody will know their names and will remember them forever, and people will sing songs about them, and women will think about them, and all this other crap, just trying to rile them up to get them to go and fight their way out and probably die. Most likely die. Probably definitely die. So anyway, and so after he makes this big long speech, his lovely right-hand man, who's been poking and prodding him this whole time, Dagmar Clovejaw, who was actually Reek in the books. But anyway, after this big long speech, Dagmar just smacks him in the back of the head and knocks him out. And they're like, I didn't think he'd ever shut up. So yeah, he makes this big huge speech, and they're all like, I didn't think he'd ever shut up, and they end up just knocking him out. And Dagmar's like, it was a good speech, I didn't want to interrupt. So basically, his men have turned on him. And if you're trying to figure that out, all you gotta do is remember back to, mentions the hornblower again too there, but yeah, if you're trying to figure out why did they do this, just, if you remember back, last episode, or the episode before, well no, it was the last episode was Blackwater. So anyway, the episode before, I think it was, Robb told Roose Bolton that he'll basically let any Ironborn who turns Theon in go back home, and won't punish them for this if they turn on Theon and give Theon to the Northerners. So you can see that looks like that's what's happening here. So the men have gotten this message and have turned on Theon now and knocked him out, put a bag over his head, and then stabbed Lewin because he came out like, what's going on? And so he gets a spear in the gut. So, yeah. His men turned on him. Lewin got stabbed. I guess that's the end of Theon holding on to Winterfell, now ain't it? So that's how that turned out. And they're all leaving, carrying Theon away, leaving Lewin there bleeding. Fun stuff. And then we go back to Tyrion. And this is when Varys has come in to see him. And he tells Tyrion that Mandon Moore, I couldn't remember if it was Mandon Moore or Boris Blount, it was Mandon Moore. Mandon Moore, one of the Kingsguard, tried to kill Tyrion on Cersei's orders. Now, we didn't see Cersei give those orders, but it's not that far-fetched, and Varys does tend to know everything, and it seems like Varys is kind of rooting for Tyrion, so it seems like it's accurate information. I mean, I don't remember them ever disproving that theory that Cersei's the one that tried to have him killed. But anyway, so he tells him that Cersei was behind the attempt on his life, and Tyrion says that he wants Bronn in the gold cloaks to guard his door 4 guards at a time, at all times, and then that's when he gets told that Bronn's no longer in charge of the gold cloaks either. So, not only has Tyrion lost his position, Bronn has lost his position too, and Tyrion's like, okay, fine, go get my hill tribes, and then he finds out that Tywin has paid off all the hill tribes to go back home. So, Tyrion's lost his position, Bronn's lost his position, the hill tribes have went back home. All kinds of fun going on here. He's pretty much lost everything, and it just, one kick in the gut after another, after another, after another. Everything's gone, all of his allies are gone. He just is screwed 18 different ways. And then Shay comes in, and Varys tells him, and why do people keep calling him Varys, or Varys? It's Varys. It's Varys. Just listen to the way the people pronounce names on the show. That's the correct pronunciation in my mind. But anyway, so Varys tells him that he's not going to get any thanks from the king, but many people will not forget what he did for the city, including him. So Varys saying, yeah, everybody else is, thinks that you're nothing, but I remember what you did, and a lot of other people will too. So anyway, then Shay is there, and she unwraps the bandage from his face, and Tyrion tries to push her away, saying, I don't expect you to stay with me either, since everybody else has left me, so I know that you don't really want to be with me, and you're free to go, etc., etc., but she's being a stubborn bitch, as usual. Acting like, oh, she's so in love with him, and that she's going to stay with him no matter what, is basically. And now, even though he's been warning her about all this danger, it took to this point where she's like, okay, fine, let's leave. Let's just get out of here, let's go. So now maybe she finally believes it. We'll see how long that lasts. But, she wants them to go to Pentos across the Narrow Sea, which is where we first met Illyrio, Daenerys, and Viserys. Viserys, another person who nobody can pronounce their name. It's Viserys. But anyway, she's talking about them going off to Pentos across the Narrow Sea and just living happily ever after, and because that happens in this in this show. And Tyrion basically, he doesn't want to go. Even though he's lost everything here, he does not want to leave. And he tells her that these bad people that he's surrounded by, those bad people are what he's good at. And he likes outsmarting them, and he likes trying to, outmaneuver them and subvert the things that they're trying to do. And he actually likes the whole game, the Game of Thrones, if you will. And he knows that he is good at it, too. So, even though he's no longer Hand, he feels compelled to stay there, to try and deal with the crap that is going on in this regime, his lovely family's regime, because he knows that he's one of the only people that can outsmart them and can outmaneuver them And he wants to keep trying. He wants to keep trying to make things better. And he can't do that if he just runs away with Shay and hides. And it's like, he's doing basically the same thing as Sansa, where she gets offered a way out and she doesn't want to take it, but he's got a pretty good reason, I think, for wanting to stay. And then we get to Rob and Talisa's stupid freaking wedding. Yeah. Yeah. And why is Little Miss Volantis and Rob getting married in the light of the Seven? Whatever. But anyway, yeah. He married Talisa. I'm sure that's going to not come back to bite him in the ass or anything, like Catelyn was telling him. See, he's too stupid in the show. It just annoys me to no end. He's too stupid in the show. He wasn't that stupid in the book. He was kind of stupid, but he had better reasons for his stupidity in the book. But that's all we get of Rob and Talisa in this episode, thank goodness. Okay, so, like I said, I don't usually complain, but the Rob and Talisa storyline annoys me so bad. And, the other thing that annoys me is how they've dealt with the prophecies in the show, or how they've completely cut out 500 prophecies from the book, and if they include any at all, they're completely different ones. But the reason I'm mentioning prophecies is because now we're at the House of the Undying. So this is where Dany's dragons supposedly are, and they're going there, and as you can see, there's no doors, there's no windows, there's no apparent way in. And there's no guards, and Jorah says, oh, they kill with magic, not metal, or not steel, or whatever. And so they're looking for a way in. And they're walking around this tower that, as I said, it has no windows, no doors, it just is a big old tower. And so they're walking around trying to look for a way in, and Jorah and her one remaining Dothraki blood rider, I wish I could remember his name, I don't know if they've ever said it, but Jorah and her one blood rider are with her as her own personal guard, because everybody else is pretty much dead. And they're walking around looking for a way in, and Jorah's following her. He's only a few feet behind her, but he follows her around and around as they're looking for a way in, and the other guy's walking around looking for a way in too. And Jorah's right behind Dany, and she's always in sight, and then suddenly he walks around and Dany has disappeared. She's no longer there. She just went poof. He keeps walking and comes back to the other guy who was standing at the place where they started. So there's no apparent door in. He just walked around and around. Dany disappeared, and he ended up back where he started. So we got some trickery happening already with the House of the Undying. And yeah, the one major complaint a lot of people have about season 2 is the way they've dealt with the House of the Undying. I mean, they've done a lot of cool stuff with the House of the Undying, the way they did it on the show, but it was way different in the book, and way more extensive, and just really bizarre and freakish the way they did it in the book. I mean, it's interesting the way they did it on the show, but the way they did it in the book, it was done that way for a reason, basically, and they completely changed it, and that's what a lot of people have a problem with. I mean, when I first saw this, I hadn't read the books yet, so I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, the stuff that happens in here. And then I read the way it was supposed to be, and I'm like, wow, they took out 99% of that whole House of the Undying stuff. But anyway, then we go back to Jaqen, our last sighting of Jaqen for a long time. People are saying he's going to be back on the show, but we'll see. Anyway, so they've escaped Harrenhal and found Jaqen, and he's up in the mountain, and then he disappears, and he's right behind her. Poof, poof, poof. Tricky. And she asks him how he killed the guards, and he says it's no harder than taking a new name if you know how. And she says, show me how. And he says, well, if you want to learn, you have to come with me to Bravos. And she says, oh, my dancing master was from Bravos. Remember Syrio Forel? And he says, to be a dancing master is something special, but to be a faceless man, first time we get that title, a faceless man is something else entirely. So maybe that's their way of telling us that Syrio and Jaqen aren't the same person, because a lot of people think that they are. That's one of the fan theories out there that Ciro and Jaqen were the same person, but he's saying, oh, it's something completely different. But I don't know, maybe they're just trying to throw us off. I don't know. Nobody knows. So anyway, yeah, that's what he's called, a faceless man. That's the name of his order. And he also points out that he knows all the names on her list, and that she could offer all those names to the Red God one by one. And she said that she wants to, but first she has to find her mother and her brother and her sister too. She adds that in kind of as an afterthought, but the point is, Arya actually does want to find Sansa too, even though her and Sansa weren't exactly on the best terms. Unlike Sansa, who's not thought of Arya once in 5 years. But anyway, so I love Sansa. So he gives her this coin and says that if she ever needs to find him again, to give that coin to any man from Braavos and say, Valar Morghulis. Title placement, Valar Morghulis. And she repeats it. And they don't tell us what that means, but we find out later that it means all men must die. But anyway, so he gives her this coin from Braavos and wanders off, and as he turns away, after giving her that whole, give it to a man from Braavos and say Valar Morghulis, he turns around again, and all of a sudden, fun stuff. We get to see what faceless man means. He turns back around again one last time, and he's somebody completely different. That's normal, right? That's normal. Now you know what faceless man means. He can change his face anytime he wants and become somebody completely different. That's not odd at all, is it? See, everybody is really interested in the way this plotline's gonna go. We've got to wait a long time before we get to that plotline again. Because we've got a lot of other crap that Arya has to deal with before we even get back to that plotline. So anyway, then we're back at Winterfell, Osha and company, sneaking out through all the burned out ruins of Winterfell and all the dead bodies that have been left behind. And even the wolves are whining. And people seem to have overlooked this too. Last time we saw Winterfell, it wasn't burnt to the ground. The Ironborn knocked out Theon and took him, presumably, to the Northerners. And then the next time we see Winterfell, it's all burnt to the ground. What happened there? And yeah, we're not being told something that happened between the Ironborn taking Theon away and them sneaking back out of the crypts. Something went down between there and there. And you do get a little more insight into that in the book, exactly what happened. That led from Theon being taken away by his own men to Winterfell now being burnt to the ground. Something happened here. And they don't explain that to us. But everybody just kind of assumed, or at least speaking for myself, I guess, because I didn't really pay much attention to that, I just kind of assumed, oh, well, when the Ironborn took Theon away, they must have burnt the place down. But as you can see, if you go back and look, we didn't see them doing that. We just saw them leaving with Theon, and then all of a sudden the place is burnt down. Something's up. But anyway, then they find Luwin dying in the Godswood. Sadness, sigh. Poor Luwin. All gone. So he gets to say his goodbyes to Bran and Rickon, and he tells Osha to take them to Castle Black, to take them to Jon, and to protect them because she's the only one who can. So then he has Hodor take them away and keeps Osha behind for a minute and asks her to, put him out of his misery, so to speak. I mean, he doesn't say that, but you get that that's what he wants, and that's what happens. So anyway, so Luwin is gone. He sent Osha on this quest to get Bran and Rickon to Castle Black and get them to Jon, where they will supposedly be safe. But as you can see, Jon's not at Castle Black anymore. He's off hanging with the wildlings. So they might need to change their plan. at some point. So anyway, this is just Bran telling him that they burn everything down, and Lewin said not everything, they didn't burn the two of you, and all that, and like I said, they get their little tearful goodbye, and he sends them off and gets Osha to kill him. So that's just them getting sent off in the next part of their quest. And like I said, we know as the audience that Jon's no longer there. So you know that this isn't gonna go the way it's supposed to go, because eventually they're either gonna get there and Jon's not gonna be there, or they're gonna find out along the way that Jon's not there, or So obviously the plan that Lewin is setting into action is not going to be what actually unfolds, because we know that things are different than they appear to be. So let me see if there's anything else that happened in this scene, because there's a couple more screen caps, and I think that's pretty much all of that. Just them saying goodbye and him telling Osha to protect them and get them to Jon. Also, since we got a couple more caps, they did this thing I watched online with them asking which death which death affected them the most. They were talking to the cast members, like which death did they think was the most, the most important for whatever reason, or the one that meant the most to them. And Isaac Hampstead Wright, who plays Bran, I believe he said it was Maester Lewin that he really misses working with and everything. Donald Sumter played Maester Lewin. But anyway, I just thought of that because it's the scene. And that's a death that you don't really think of as that high up there, because he wasn't a very major character. But still, he was like the last one looking after baby Starks. So, he was important. Even though he wasn't a major character, he was important. And then this is just them going off on their new quest with the wolves at their side, and you can see Winterfell burning in the background. And yeah, I don't usually spoil things, and I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but I find it interesting that here we are in episode 210, where you see Winterfell burning in the background, and if you watch the beginning of the show, they show all the places, and I don't even know, I forget if they did it in the first episode of season 5, but every time they show Winterfell on the map at the beginning, it was still burning for like the entire next 2 years of the show. Every time they showed Winterfell at the beginning, it was still burning. So it's just amusing that they kept it burning in the intro for so long. Like I said, they might have been burning. I don't think it was at the beginning of season 5. I don't really remember, because I just watched the first episode of season 5, so I don't remember exactly if it still was. I'll have to look at it. Yeah. And so then we get back to the show's version of House of the Undying. Like I said, I don't usually complain, but this was something that I really, really was annoyed about after I read the way it was supposed to be. But anyway, she goes in and she sees all these doors, and she has to pick a door, and she goes through this door, and it leads her to this eerie version of the throne room. And as you can see, the throne room is completely covered in snow, and the ceilings all burn out. Yes, everything in here is kind of a vision. It's a weird prophecy-ish vision, although she has 500 more in the book. But anyway, so she sees the throne room in ruins, all covered in snow, the ceiling burnt out, and she's heading toward the throne. She's reaching for the throne. And as you can see, the throne's not really what she thought it was any longer. It's not nearly as extravagant as it used to be. It's a ruin. It's covered in snow. It's abandoned. The ceilings burn out. In other words, the throne is not all it's cracked up to be, now is it? So she's reaching for the throne, and then she hears her dragon's cry, and she walks away from the throne. She leaves her pursuit of the throne to go find her babies, her dragons, and then when she starts heading in the sound or in the direction of the sound of the dragons. She comes out of the wall. That is the wall. The exact same scene of the wall that we saw in the very first scene of the very first episode. And then through the snow, she sees a Dothraki hut, and she heads for that. She bypasses the throne to go after her dragons. It leads her to the wall. She walks away from the wall in pursuit of her Dothraki husband and baby. She goes and gets reunited with her husband and her baby, who are not really there, but that's what she went after. And she immediately realizes that it's not real. She knows that it's some magic that's tricking her. This is not real. This is not what she's meant to do. This is not where she's meant to be, but that's where she wants to be. She wants to be with her baby and her husband, but she knows that it's not real. That it's not where she's meant to go. It's not the fate she's meant to have. She goes to reunite with them, despite the fact that she knows it's not where she belongs. And we get this really, really, really touching scene between her and Drogo, and Rhaego, her child, who was never actually born after all, and what life would have been if it had went differently. And she is saying, maybe she's dead and she just doesn't know it yet. And he's saying, well, maybe I just refused to go to the Nightlands, which is the Dothraki afterlife, because I wasn't with you. And they say, maybe it's a dream, maybe it's my dream, maybe it's your dream. I don't know. They know that it's not real. And they know they want to be together, and they want this to be their reality, but both of them know it's not real. But Drogo's saying that if it's a dream, he'll kill anybody that tries to wake him up, because he wants that too. This is the life they want to have, but they know that it's not real, because obviously Drogo and Rhaego are both dead. She's lost both of them already. So she could stay there and live in that fantasy, but they both know that it's not real, even though that they want it to be. And it's a really sweet scene, because you can see, you get reminded of how heartbroken she has been and what she's lost, and how bad she wanted this to be her life, even though she knows it's not real, and she knows that it's not the life she's meant to have. So it's a really, really sweet scene between them, basically admitting this is what they've always wanted, but they know that they can't have it, and they know that it's not reality, and they know that that's not what Daenerys is meant for. She's meant for something else. So basically they at least finally get to say goodbye. Even though it's a dream or a vision or something, they finally get their goodbye. They get to see one glimpse. They get to spend one moment in a reality they both wanted but couldn't have. But she knows that's not what she's meant for. So then, as she's saying goodbye to him, she repeats what Mirri Maz Duur said about, when the sun sets in the east and rises in the west, and the mountains sway, when the seas go dry, all that stuff, basically saying, I know that I can't be with you now. And she hears her dragons cry, and she walks away. She walks away from the destiny that she's not actually meant for. And that leads her back to her dragons, which is what she is meant for, to be with her dragons, to be with her babies. And they're all chained up, and she wants to release them, but they're in chains. And then when she turns around, lovely Pyat Pree shows up again, the warlock who led her here in the first place. And he tells her an interesting little tidbit here. If you remember back in one of my reviews for season 1, it was when Bran had first woken up, and he's talking about magic with Luwin, and Luwin says, oh, maybe magic was once real, but it no longer is, and it's no longer part of the world. And that's an interesting little fact that's thrown in there because of what Pyat Pree now tells her. In this scene. He tells her that when he tells her that magic was born into the world again and became real again when her dragons were born. So he's basically telling her that magic was gone from the world until her dragons are born, and now it's back. And he says that their magic is strongest in the presence of the dragons, and the dragons are strongest in the presence of Daenerys. And that's why they're going to keep Daenerys there forever with her dragons, because it'll keep their magic strong, because Dany and her dragons are what has brought magic back to the world, and it's the strongest when they're together. And she says, this isn't my home. I won't stay here, because he gives her this whole thing about, you'll stay here through winter, summer, and winter again, and you'll be here forever, and here with your babies. And she says, no, I'm not going to be here. This isn't my home. She knows that she's meant for something else. And she says Dracarys, which is a Valyrian for dragon fire. And that's when the little itty bitty baby dragons have learned how to breathe fire, as we saw when he was trying to eat a few episodes back. And they all just spit fire right past, around, through Dany. And she doesn't even flinch. The fire doesn't affect her at all. And it sets Pyatt on fire and basically burns him to a crisp. So these tiny, tiny little baby dragons can still do this much when they have a reason and when they have a goal. This is what the baby dragons can do. They basically just set him on fire. Mr. Magic Warlock Man isn't much of a match for even little baby dragons. So as you can see, she, as long as she's got her dragons, she's a bit more formidable than he thought. And there's a meme that's a picture of Dany chained up with the fire going past her like that, and says, think you can imprison me, my boys will break me out. So that's just fun. So yeah, Pyatt thought he could hold her, but not with her baby dragons on her side. And he said it himself, her and the dragons are strongest when they're together. So proof of that. And then they go back to the dragons after he's already been barbecued, and you see that the dragon's breath is so hot it's actually turned the chains that were holding them to ash, and they are free once again. She's got her dragons back. She's not anybody's prisoner. Ha ha ha. So, I mean, like I said, they do some cool things in the show. I just really wish they would have left all the prophecies in. Although, in the book, her dragons weren't actually stolen from her, so I guess they did change it because of that, but still, I don't know, they should have just kept it the way it was in the book, because we lost 500 prophecies when they changed it. But anyway, then we go back up north. Went from fire to ice. Ha ha ha. And, basically, this is just, Corin and Jon, mostly Corin, setting their plan into action. Jon provokes Ygritte a little bit to distract them long enough for, Corin to grab a sword, and then him and Corin start a fight together. And, they've already kind of discussed this very, very minimally since they've been prisoners this whole time. But we got the idea that Corin wants Jon to be a double agent, so to speak, a spy for the Night's Watch. And they start this fight, and Corin, says all the things he knows will piss off Jon. Like, when they're fighting, he's like, oh, who taught you that? Your traitor father or your whore mother? And etc., etc. And saying, oh, you're just going to give the man an invitation to Castle Black. And basically, they just staged this whole fight, because that's the only way they can gain the trust of the Wildlings. So, it basically leads to, the fight leads to Jon killing Corin. And after he does that, he obviously isn't very happy about it himself, but he knows that's what Corin wanted him to do. And that's actually, it works, because right after he kills Corin, the Lord of Bones there, cuts him loose, and then they, you know, lead him off to Mance Rayder, their leader. And also they have that little line in there where the Lord of Bones tells them to burn Corran because they don't want that one coming back for them. And the plan has worked. Jon's not thrilled with the fact that he had to kill Corran, but that was the plan. And it apparently worked, because he gets cut free, and then they start leading him off to meet Mance Rayder, the one who is the leader of the wildlings, the king beyond the wall, I believe, is what they... I don't know if this is the first time they call him that in this episode. They might have earlier. But after this, Ygritte says, "Come along, Jon Snow, it's time to meet the king beyond the wall." And so their plan worked. Like I said, Jon didn't really like having to kill Corran, but it did work, because now he is starting his Season 3 journey, which is basically him being with the wildlings, trying to get the information about when and how the wildlings plan to attack Castle Black. So this is just a setup for that. This is what Jon had to do to get that plan put in action and get it to work. So, it did work. I'm sure Jon won't feel guilty or anything about having to kill Corran, but that's what Corran wanted him to do. And it did work. So, they do end up leading him off to his Season 3 storyline, which, yeah, it was, I don't know. It was, I guess, similar in the book, because he was with the wildlings for quite a while in the one book, but I don't know. I guess I did kind of like it slightly better in the show, but that's because I just got really sick of hearing about Jon and Ygritte together all the time. I mean, they spent more time on other stuff. I mean, they did show them together, but it wasn't nearly as much as it was in the book, so, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, this just sets him up for the Season 3 plotline. Because all of Season 3 he pretty much is going to be spending with the wildlings. Maybe that's why I didn't... See, I'm one of those strange people. Most people dislike Season 2. I didn't really have a problem with Season 2 other than the whole... this episode. The Robin Sleezel thing and the lack of prophecies. That's the only complaints I had about Season 2. But I thought Season 3 moved really, really slowly compared to Season 1 and 2. I mean, there were some really good parts in Season 3. It just... they were spread out so much that it seemed like it took longer to get to them. I guess, I don't know. But maybe the reason I didn't like Season 3 is because most of Jon's plotline for Season 3 was with the wildlings, and I was never thrilled with that plotline anyway. I mean, I get why they did it, but still. Anyway, we get back to Dany and company, and Xaro in bed with Doria! Doria, yeah, the one who supposedly that Daenerys thought was dead at the same time. She found Irri dead. She's like, well, I can't find Doria, she must be dead. Well, if they don't show them die, they're probably not dead. See, this is a complete switch off from the book, because in the book, before they even got to Karth, Doria died of starvation and hunger, and she's still with Irri and Jaquie in Book 5. But on the show, Jaquie just completely disappeared after Season 1, and Irri got killed in Season 2, and then this happened with Doria. So they completely shuffled around her handmaidens on the show. Completely different from what happened in the book. Because on the show, she doesn't have any of her Dothraki handmaidens anymore. Because Doria was the last one. Jaquie just disappeared. Irri got killed. In a deleted scene, we saw that Doria is the one that killed Irri. We didn't see that on the show. But in a deleted scene, Doria strangled Irri. And then she went off to be with Xaro. And then they open the vault here. And, it's empty. So, basically, Xaro is spewing all this crap about how he's the richest man in Karth and blah, blah, blah. But his vault's completely empty. Nice. And then Danny turns around and says, "Thank you, Zarodon Duxos," another name that nobody seems to be able to pronounce because apparently everybody watches the show in mute. But anyway, she says, "Thank you, Zarodon Duxos, for teaching me this lesson." The lesson being, don't trust anybody. That's the lesson she has learned from him. And, so yeah. She found out that Doria and Zaro, both liars, who, screwed her over, basically, conspired to steal her dragons. She's not happy. She throws them in their empty vault and leaves them there. The end. Yeah. So we don't actually see them dying, but you can pretty much assume that if they're locked in a vault and left there, they're gonna die. But anyway, and of course they're screaming for her to not lock them up, and she's ignoring them because they suck. But anyway, so then Jorah said, "So it was all a lie," and she looks at all the valuables that are around the room outside the vault, and she's like, "It looks real enough to me," and she holds up this golden goblet to Jorah and says, "Is it real enough to buy a ship?" Because the whole thing was she wanted to get a ship so she could go to Westeros. And there was a lot more of that in the book, where she's going to all these different people in Karth and trying to get ships off of them, and none of them would help her, and it just went on and on and on and on and on. She just kept asking for help, and everybody kept saying, "Screw you, I'm not going to help you unless you do this, that, and the next," and yeah. So it went on a little bit longer in the book. But anyway, Jorah tells her that, yeah, they can buy a ship with what's there in Zaro's house. And also, I believe Zaro's still alive in the book. We don't really see him again, I don't think, but I think they refer to him and he's still alive. So that's a little bit of a difference too. So they did change a lot of Dany's plotline for season 2. But anyway, I mean, it still ends up with her leaving Karth and having a boat and having her dragons. So it still ends in the same place. It's just really weird why they changed it so much. It's very strange. But anyway, then we get to the final scene of the season. Not just the final scene of the episode. The final scene of season 2. Grand Dolores said Sam trying to not freeze to death in the frozen north there. And of course Sam's still going on about Gilly, and they're fed up with it. It's like, shut up, Gilly, we're stuck here in Gilly. So, yeah. A funny side note, Gilly and Gendry, the two most strangely pronounced names, hard G's, and yes, I've heard people call them Gilly and Gendry. Yeah, it looks like they should be pronounced that way, but on the show it's Gilly and Gendry. And I've said before, however they pronounce it on the show, I'm going with is the correct pronunciation, and it's Gilly and Gendry. But the side note I was getting to is that they were both on the British version of Skins first 2 years, and they both played drug crazed sex addicts or something. But anyway, but yeah, Hannah Murray and Joe Dempsey, Gilly and Gendry, they're both on the British version of Skins. But anyway, so they hear the horn blast, and they think it's 1, Corn and John. No. 2, wildlings. No, let's fight. We're gonna fight some wildlings. And then they heard the 3rd blast, and they're just like, run! Yeah, because they know it's White Walkers. The 3rd blast, it's White Walkers. So, Dolores said and Gran take off running. Of course, Sam's a little slower, so he gets left behind as these White Walkers are bearing down on them. So, knowing that it's Game of Thrones, it's like, oh, I guess Sam's gonna die now, right? So, because those two took off, Sam's left there alone, and we've heard 3 blasts. The White Walkers are coming. So anyway, Sam's left there by himself, and he looks for a place to hide, and he hides behind this rock, this conveniently placed rock. Yeah. The thing is, all the up north scenes, everybody thinks they're green screens, but they're not. They actually film them in Iceland and stuff. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they use some effects for some things, but I'm sure that rock wasn't really there, but maybe it was, you don't know. So anyway, Sam's hiding behind the rock, and you see the White Walkers, or the Whites. The Whites. Yes, there's a difference. The Whites are the reanimated corpses. The White Walkers are the crystally, skeleton-y dudes. But they have all got some really weird blue eyes. But yeah, you see the whites all coming towards them, coming that direction, coming towards Sam. But Sam's hiding, scared out of his mind, but he's hiding. And then you see it's not just whites. There's White Walkers too. And yeah, and they even have dead horses. How freaky looking is that? Horses are whites too. So anyway, and then that's a White Walker. Okay? That's a White Walker. As you can see, they look a little bit different. They look almost like they're made of ice or something. So the White Walkers and the whites are two different things, but they're both there. And this is where, I guess if you pay attention or watch it enough times, you kind of get the idea that the White Walkers are controlling the whites, is what we get from this. And you can see that that lead White Walker there is on a horse, and he's got that big staff, and he looks like he's, giving orders, telling them forward march, but it's really just a screechy sound that he makes. But you get the idea that the White Walkers are controlling the whites, and they're leading an army of them south towards the wall. So yeah, it looks like they're pretty close to the wall here, but I think that might actually be a mountain, not the wall, because they're supposedly the Fist of the First Men, and I'm pretty sure that's not the wall, that's just a mountain, because they're not that close to the wall, because we get a lot of time after this where they're still not at the wall, and as you can see, it kind of ends there, so I don't think that's a wall. I think that's a mountain, honestly, the Frost Fangs or whatever it's called. But anyway, yeah, they're going south, and there's a lot of them, a whole lot of them, a lot of them. So yeah, so all the little games they're playing down south don't really mean much when you see what's coming from the north, now does it? So anyway, I know I was very scattered in this one. I don't know. I got a lot of caps for this one, but I don't know. I guess because it's the finale, I didn't want to miss a thing, because a lot of stuff happens in the finale. But as I said, the next season is season 3, and a lot of people like season 3. I really liked a lot of parts of season 3. I don't know, it seemed to move slower to me than 1 and 2. I mean, I still liked it, it just seemed to move slower. But most people have complaints about season 2. But this is season 2. And like I said, the only complaints I really had about season 2 is the way they changed Rob's plot line, and the way they cut out 1,050,000 prophecies that Daenerys actually had in the House of the Undying. If you want to know more about that, I do have a prophecy video that I posted a while back, where I talk about all the prophecies that are in the books and how they cut out most of them. But it's kind of spoilery, so don't watch it if you don't want spoiled. But anyway, it talks a lot about the prophecies that weren't in the show, that should have been in the show, but weren't. So anyway, that's it for now. I don't know when I'm going to get season 3 out, hopefully soon. And no, I didn't get all 4 seasons done before season 5 started, but season 5 has started, and that's all that matters, right? Yay! So anyway, that's it for now, and I will get 3 started as soon as I can. Bye, y'all.